Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women who are reshaping our world. Coming up. A spike in violence in Sudan's civil war sees a rise in the number of women and girls being raped by paramilitary rapid support forces in the east of the country. Also, what happens when men outnumber women, in some cases as high as 25% in parts of eastern Germany, where young women have left for better opportunities elsewhere, and how the far right stands to politically benefit. And taking on the high seas, we meet the 23-year-old woman who's competing in the iconic solo yachting race, the Vendée Globe. But we begin in Sudan, which has experienced a surge in extreme violence in recent weeks, and with no political solution in sight for the conflict between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. Women and girls have been especially impacted by the intensifying conflict, with rape being used as a weapon of war. RSF fighters having recently attacked villages and towns in the eastern Al Jazeera state, where local officials say they've sexually assaulted girls and women aged from 6 to 60. Siobhan Silk has more.
Sudanese women are on the front lines of a conflict they did not choose. A year and a half into the war between the paramilitary rapid support forces and the regular army, a UN Security Council meeting heard of some of the most extreme violence yet against civilians.
We are receiving reports of horrific violations of international human rights and humanitarian law, including sexual violence committed predominantly against women and girls.
The disturbing reports come from Jazeera State, where RSF fighters went on a rampage last month. They killed dozens of people and targeted women and girls. Witnesses said some women took extreme action to avoid rape.
The shocking accounts of locals confirm that the brutality of rape has sadly forced over 130 women in an unprecedented move to commit mass suicide as an escape from further sexual violence.
Sudan's ambassador to the UN told the briefing the protection of civilians was a priority. But UN officials said both warring parties bore responsibility for violence against the population, saying the Sudanese armed forces are carrying out indiscriminate airstrikes in populated areas and affiliated forces are attacking civilians.
We are deeply concerned by the alarming trajectory of this conflict. While it has already unleashed horrendous suffering, the conditions are there for it to claim exponentially more lives.
UN officials said both sides were being propped up by support and weapons from outside. They're urging the RSF and the Sudanese government to come to the negotiating table to end the war, which has killed more than 24,000 people and created the world's worst displacement crisis. 14 million people, almost a third of the country's population, have been forced from their homes.
And officials from the UN Human Rights Office say nearly 70% of the fatalities it's verified in the Gaza war are women and children. They condemned what it called a systemic violation of the fundamental principles of international humanitarian law. The UN tally since the start of the war, in which Israel's military is fighting Hamas militants, includes only fatalities it has managed to verify with 3 sources, and the counting continues. In response, Israel's diplomatic mission to the UN in Geneva says it categorically rejects the report. To Germany now, and since the fall of the war and reunification, women seeking better opportunities have left eastern Germany in massive numbers with dramatic consequences. Today in the region, men outnumber women in some communities by as much as 25%. With fewer women, political radicalisation is growing, with the far-right AfD party particularly reaping the benefits, as our team on the ground report.
In Lusatia, close to the Polish border, women are becoming increasingly rare. Like many of her generation, Claudia Keller left the region to study. She returned 3 years ago to be closer to her family and open a plant nursery.
I produce herbs, shrubs, a few vegetables, but mainly flowers.
Born in 1983, Claudia Keller is an exception. Since the fall of the wall, a third of the population has left the region, and unlike her, many women have never returned.
There aren't many of them, so I'm delighted every time I bump into a familiar face at the market. But it's a minority. I'd say 80% never came back. Ever since the fall of the wall, they've been telling us to leave. There's no future.
Lusatia is one of the regions most affected by a lack of women. After 1989 and the collapse of East German industry, many left because they had to, and the women rarely returned. For Rennie and Holger, who were visiting Görlitz market, it is obvious why.
It was tough here in the 90s. We couldn't find work. You couldn't earn a decent wage.
Women who left after the fall of the wall and found a partner in the West tend to stay there because they find new roots and start a family. Perhaps for men it's easier to come back.
Görlitz, completely restored since reunification, has a lot to offer, including exceptional architecture and low rents. 5,000 Poles now live in the town, and since 2015, 500 people have been housed there free of charge for a few months, albeit without much success. Compensating for such an exodus looks like mission impossible.
We're missing a whole generation. All those who left at the time were between 20 and 30 years old. And in many cases, they started their families not in Görlitz, but elsewhere. It's changed the face of the town.
No other region in the world, not even the Arctic Circle, has lost so many women in such a short space of time as Eastern Germany. The average age is rapidly rising. In Lusatia, which still lives off coal, job offers rarely arouse the interest of those who might return. Social scientist Julia Gabler says social pressure does the rest.
It's a loss society feels and the men also experience on a daily basis. The couples market is smaller, and that doesn't improve the demographic development of these regions. That's not an argument to bring women back. Rather, it makes the city even less attractive for women because they feel under pressure.
To encourage women to stay, Julia Gabler has set up a self-help network for those who want to get involved in community, cultural and political projects. While the shortage of women contributes to the ageing of the population, some studies suggest that it also leads to political radicalisation. It is in the regions of the former East Germany that the far-right AfD party has flourished.
What citizen initiatives in the region give you hope and courage?
For the last 3 years, this group of activists from Berlin has been running a series of workshops in Lusatia. Their aim, to give the women of the region the tools they need to resist.
In all regions where extreme right-wing movements have a strong presence, women often choose to leave because they impose certain ideas on gender and the patriarchy. This is not how we want to live. We can fight these structures, but we still have a long way to go.
For the time being, the vicious cycle is far from being broken. More than a quarter of young women in the region are considering leaving.
Now, 40 sailors, including 6 women, have set off on a 45,000-kilometre race around the world known as the Vendée Globe. Among them is the youngest person ever to take part in the solo race, Violette d'Orange, who's just 23 years old. Since the creation of the race in 1989, only 12 women have taken part and just 10 have completed the race. This report from our colleagues at France 2.
I started sailing at the age of 7. Ever since I was little, I've wanted to go on adventures, to cross the Atlantic, go around the world. It's always been a dream of mine.
Not many people can say they've sailed around the world alone at the age of 23. Violette d'Orange is the youngest person to try by taking on the Vendée Globe race, also known as the Everest of the seas. This boat is her home for the next 3 months.
I'm really happy with this boat. It's straightforward, reliable, fast. It's the perfect boat to start with.
To prepare for this challenge, she's put her engineering studies on hold and brought her loved ones to training with her. Her boyfriend, Charles, is on board for her final session.
Oh, she'll hold out for sure. The boat will break before she does. Well, better if it doesn't.
I've already thought about accidents, situations that you have to be prepared for and anticipate, like knowing how to get your life raft out in 2 minutes. If it happens, it happens, and I should be prepared for it.
She may only be 5'2", but nothing seems to scare her. Violette has been getting ready in this warehouse in Brittany, preparing for all possible scenarios with her team.
Over the span of 3 months, there are bound to be issues and things to repair.
Between the equipment and the food, there are about 400 kilos worth of bags on board. And there's always room for something that'll make her feel at home.
This is my mascot because I love dachshunds. Photos of people closest to me, my boyfriend, my family.
Mental preparation played a big part in the run-up to the adventure. Her father is confident she'll be okay.
I really trust her. She's strong. She's careful. And I'm really proud of her, of course, for making it this far. It's incredible.
Out of the 40 skippers taking part in this year's edition of the Vendée Globe, only 6 are women.
We're getting better and better. Yeah, there used to be no women at all. Now there are 6, which is great, but there's still room for improvement.
Since it started in 1989, only 10 women have completed the race.
Truly impressive to see. And that's all for this edition, so until our next show, bye for now.